Hello, this is Head to Head on UATV, and I'm Oles Gerjuk. Today we're discussing how is Ukraine improving its investment climate. It's a top state among the European, Middle Eastern, and African countries for future investments. That's according to Institutional Investor Survey 2017, published half a year ago. It meant that hedge funds were the most likely to travel to the country in the next 12 months. And now to connect the Ukrainian businesses with the government, investors, and business leaders at major companies worldwide, the annual New Ukraine International Investment Conference kicks off this week in the capital. To tell us more about it, we welcome to the studio Alex David Bart, founder, managing partner at Empire State Capital Partners. Hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Alice.
So your company invented the International Investment Conference in Kiev, and it's already being held for the sixth time already, right? So
yes.
What is on the agenda this year?
So first off, yes, we did create it, but specifically, what I had in mind and why it's called New Ukraine specifically, and we don't put our investment bank brand up top. Because coming from the West, from New York, where I grew up, I know a little bit about the fact that it's better to have something where everyone cooperates. And a lot of times in this part of the world, the post-Soviet space, there's a lot of strong competition where everyone does their own separate thing and doesn't go to each other's party, so to say. So what I wanted to do was build a brand, and then this year we're already inviting everyone to partake, and we're going to try to let it out of its nest and have it be something for the entire country as a whole. Something like a Davos, global summit, but in Ukraine. So we're happy to be inviting our competitors this year, all of them, and other sectors as well. So we want to make something. This is our corporate social responsibility. We want to help bring up the entire economy so that our part of it also goes up. How they say, a rising tide raises all ships.
Okay, but what kind of cooperation to expect between these competitors and other participants?
Well, I think that at a certain point, the way to build something like that is to have basically the leaders in each sector formulate a supervisory board of sorts.
What specific sectors are you talking about?
I'm talking about there's investment banking, there's investment funds, there's agriculture companies, there's industry, there's regular banks, there's government sector, legal firms. So we would need to get everyone together, and sometimes also creative people. Like, for instance, one person that's been very helpful is Ruslana. She's gonna...
The singer?
Yes. She has quite a good job promoting the brand of Ukraine, just because she has developed her own brand, and we were together actually with her as well in Dallas, Texas last month, where we did a little a New Ukraine pavilion. And it was an outreach program because Ukraine doesn't always go out to places like Texas. They typically go to New York and London. But we wanted to reach out further, and there's quite a lot of untapped investment there. And we went there to promote Ukraine in general, and it was actually at EarthX, which was the largest Earth Day environmental expo in the United States, I believe. and that's what we're doing. This is like ambassadorial work for the betterment of the whole economy and the country. So it's all a joint effort, I think.
But is this conference about panel discussions only, or also about presentations of different companies?
It's gonna be a mix, and what we saw is that before we actually just had the panel discussions with fairly large panels, and it would get a little bit strenuous, as you can imagine, just like sitting at a lecture and back in school. So what we're trying to do is actually have, maybe smaller panels, mainly with some more back and forth rather than presentations, to make it lively. But then also in between the panels, we will have some keynotes that will be able to make concise presentations. And also, what new we will have is an expo for companies and startups and technology in the venue as well at Parkovy.
Well, taking into account the presentations, the most successful presentations in previous years, what sides of Ukraine's business, production, or industry could be seen as strong sides on the world scale?
Well, throughout the years, always agriculture is quite important, because Ukraine is basically in the top 3 global players for agriculture, and can actually continue going that, because it's not fully, the land here is not fully optimized in terms of the potential. But then also it needs to go into value-added products like organic and processing. So instead of selling grain, we should be turning that into flour, and then turning that into pasta, and then exporting that. So there's room to grow the economy there. But the thing that myself and my advisors in Washington want to focus on is defense and aerospace and cybersecurity.
Okay, this is very actual.
Because yes, I actually just came back from there. After Texas, I went to Washington, and we're expecting a very important delegation to come out here to continue that discussion. The fact that recently we saw the moment with the javelins being provided for Ukraine, and a few other key moments that happened.
So is there more weapon to be provided for Ukraine?
Well, that's actually what I want.
Could you reveal a bit?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to discuss. I can't reveal everything, but actually the key thing is that was a symbolic thing, but Ukraine also produces weapons, and actually not that bad, and at a pretty good cost per result. So one of the long-term goals that we see possible with both Ukроборонпром and government-related entities, as well as private sector. There are defense manufacturers that are not government-owned. And we see a possibility to bring American and other partners to do joint ventures and
to consult
develop
those companies.
To work together to build higher technology
here in Ukraine.
Here in Ukraine, yes, because look, there used to be a joke that Americans fighting in the Middle East would sometimes send a $1 million cruise missile to blow up a camel. Obviously, if we could make cheaper models here for those situations where you don't really need to have very expensive single-use equipment, so to say, it makes more sense, right? Because the U.S. has by far the best military technology, but it's by far also the most expensive. So there's always a point to having, let's say, a crude and effective version for cost effectiveness as well.
But how much of interest do the American weapon producers have towards this issue?
Well, look, let's not just talk about weapons. Boeing has an R&D facility here, right? the airplane company Boeing. Why? It's theirs. They know that there are very good aerospace engineers here. And they come here to reduce their cost and maybe
it's much cheaper to produce.
Yeah, so it's that happens all the time. Ford makes plants all over the world. It's not an issue. But the key thing actually is that this is a very unique situation, and I would put it similar to Israel. That Israel actually developed some things that were even ahead of just things developed just in the U.S., like, for instance, the Iron Dome system that shoots almost every rocket out of the sky. The reason being is that there's always a conflict there, so there was always a need to upgrade and test and use the system, whereas, you know, inside of America, you don't, it's good, but you don't really have active need for defending the territory. And now we have a similar situation, just as in Israel, we have in Ukraine. And although it's a bad situation, what ends up happening is the front lines are key for innovation, because quickly you need to defend yourself and new things are developed. So this is actually one of the first times, I believe, that there's drone-on-drone warfare, because typically all of the recent wars were a superpower or a modern country against a second world country that doesn't have high technology. But here you have the Russian-backed separatists getting technology and drones and other things from there. They're probably not making it in their garage.
Yeah, of course.
And then here we also have pretty good technology in Ukraine. Actually, it's same base of Soviet defense manufacturing. So.
Well, but that's a very different topic. Let's get back to the investment conference. So you guys connect local businesses with the government and with foreign investors.
Yes.
Do you follow up on the growth of these Ukrainian companies who are participating in such a conference?
Yes, we are. I mean, obviously, as an investment bank, the upside of the conference is to try to do some business, and what I like to do is try to focus on closing deals at the conference. So I put people together, and I ask them to try to find some way to work together, and then we have good gala events, after parties and everything, which also brings people closer together. We also have site visits, where last year we went to see Maria and Tonov and Ukraland Farming's operations. This year we're going to have a lineup of a few site visits that will be soon announced as well after the event. And the reason that these conferences are good for actually getting deals closed, sometimes it's a deal that we're involved in, sometimes it's just people that met there, and there's nothing that makes them work with us, but obviously we say that we'll be glad to help and to make sure that it follows through. But the foreign investors, they will not most likely send money over here from London or from New York without what's called kicking the tires. Coming here, seeing the company, seeing the management, talking to government.
Of course, they need to check all the situation here on the ground. But in your opinion, how much is Ukraine of interest, in interest of the foreign investors this spring?
I think that right now is the pinnacle. We've been Empire State itself is basically celebrating its 4th year anniversary. These conferences end up falling kind of on our the date of when we founded, and that was back right after the revolution in the middle of May. And we made a bet then. We thought that after the revolution everything was going to go up, and we kept waiting for that bet to play out. I'm seeing right now that it's already gaining steam. The amount of people that just come here by themselves from Israel. I was just there myself, and then there was a group that came here, real estate investors. There was always technology investors. We're also founding members of UVCA, Ukraine Venture Capital Association, and there always a lot of venture investors going back and forth. That's actually a big sector, the technology and the startups. There's just a much higher activity rate, and that's about the point where everyone starts to make that decision, and then it just all goes, because there's fear and greed, right? Risk and reward. And as soon as the perceived reward outweighs the perceived risk, then everyone goes in. Now, a smart investor tries to come in a little bit before, and we see a lot of those already here. So I think that it's about time.
Okay, well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for you for now, but let's hope that Ukraine will speed up in reforming and eventually prospering. And thank you so much for this interesting conversation.
And we hope to see everyone May 16th in Ukraine.
Thank you. That was Alex David Bart, founder and managing partner at Empire State Capital Partners. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.